Hello everyone and welcome to this video. This video is about the recent drama, as you probably already heard about it. Recently Vladimir Kramnik published a post which in it he is basically accusing Hikaru Nakamura of cheating. And he's referring to some statistics and the winning streak that Hikaru had recently. And personally, what I think about it is that it's kind of ridiculous that he's accusing Hikaru because obviously Hikaru has a long career of playing chess both over the board and online. But okay, he's Kramnik. He's now accusing basically everybody with some suspicious statistics. But today's I want to show you 3 games of which Vladimir is accusing Hikaru based on, and basically Hikaru scored 45.5 out of 46 games, and I chose 3 interesting games from those 3 so that you can see that okay, we can say that Hikaru won these games, but we will see how the games look like and how the games went. So the first game is against FIDE Master Artin Ashraf, and also one of the things that Kramnik probably basically ignored is that although the Hikaru's opponent's rating, in this case his online rating, is 2900, his over the board rating is basically less than 2400. So I mean, they are basically not on the same level. But nevertheless, let's see how the game went. Hikaru is playing with the black pieces. White start open up with b3. Black respond with e5, bishop b2, knight c6, e3, a6. So already we see that Hikaru always in blitz plays some kind of funny openings. Of course, a6 is to stop bishop b5 because in these positions, white has 2 main plans, going bishop b5 and also c4. And sometimes they also play f4. For example, Bent Larsen was somebody who did this plan a lot. Okay, so knight f3, e4, knight d4, knight f6, c4. Okay, so far so good. Logical opening. Knight e5. Engine is giving some question marks, but okay, very natural move. You don't want to really trade on d4. So okay, knight e5, knight c3, c5, kicking the knight away, knight c2, and d6. Here, probably black could consider knight d3 check. Okay, white obviously has to take it and move the knight to some unfortunate square like a3. But it's not clear because the pawn on d3 is weak. Nevertheless, okay, here black can play something like d5, open up the center, and actually black already I think here is better. But okay, Hikaru played much more solid move d6, followed d4, knight c6, and here white decided that okay, he wants to transfer the game into an endgame. So he took on c5, dc5, queen takes d8 check, knight takes d8, and long castle. And well, what about this endgame is that this e4 pawn that black has is a little bit overextended, and it can get lost. So this endgame is actually very tricky for black, and as you will see, actually Hikaru gets the lost position. So let's see how. So bishop d7, very natural, developing the bishop, but computer already doesn't like it. Bishop e2, bishop e7, g4, and okay, g4 computer doesn't like. Computer is much more in like f3 and so on, but g4 is a very natural move. The point is that we want to take this e4 pawn, right? So as you will see in the game, bishop takes g4, bishop takes g4, knight takes g4, and now knight e4. The drawback is that, okay, now this knight is protecting f2, so f5, and kicking the knight away. You cannot, of course, move the knight, then f2 just falls, so h3 is basically forced. Now f takes c4, h takes g4, and knight e6. And here perhaps black's position is not too bad, although I would personally prefer white. So as you can see, Hikaru is just slightly worse in the endgame. The times are pretty equal now. But let's see what happens. So rook d5, Okay, white activates the rook, maybe he wants to double up on the d file, and also this rook can join various squares on the fixed rank. King f7, which computer hates, because now simply rook f5 check, and you have to come back. And now actually white makes a remarkable maneuver, which I think is very instructive. So just look at this knight. This knight is not very great. It cannot go towards the center. It's really just not very well placed. And whites find a very nice maneuver to reposition this knight. So just look at it. Knight a3, okay, h6, knight b1. So now it's clear that the knight that one wasn't very good on c2 is went to a3 to b1, and now it's coming to c3 and potentially to the d5, and also putting pressure on the pawn on e4. So very nice maneuver. Rook f8, Hikaru trying to exchange this active rook on f5, knight c3 as promised, knight g5, and now knight d5. And okay, this knight is just very strong on d5, it's threatening knight c7 check at the moment, but it's just very, very strong. Note that also g7 pawn is kind of hanging. Okay, Hikaru takes on f5, goes king f7, defending this and also stopping knight c7 check. But now, okay, simply knight e7, king e7, bishop g7, knight f7, bishop takes h6. And now we can simply see that white is 2 pawns up at the moment. Of course, this f5 pawn is a little bit weak, is a little bit loose, but still, okay, black has to spend some time to take it. And here, basically, black is just lost. So now we can see already, even though Hikaru won this game, he's already lost after 28 moves. So again, when you look at the results, sure, Hikaru won most of the games, but it was not like he was dominating, crushing his opponent all over the game. It was very up and down battles, and sometimes, because Hikaru is also so good with his speed, and in the time troubles, he would just trick the opponents. That was like most of the games that I looked at. So, okay, now let's see what happens. King f6, bishop f4, b6, rook h7, activating the rook, b5, king c2, bringing the king, bc4, rook b4, rook d8, rook h5, rook g8. And okay, already from this moment on, players get pretty low on time. So the moves are kind of a little bit rushed, so to say, and okay, they have to play fast. So bishop g3, rook c8, they're just trying to make moves. Obviously, white is completely winning, 2 pawns up. Bishop h4 check, king e5, king c3, rook g8, bishop g3 check, king f6, bishop h4, repeating quite a bit of time. And now it goes f6 check, very strong move. King e6, rook c5. And okay, in this position, white is now 3 pawns up and has a completely winning position. This f pawn is actually quite strong for now. But okay, Hikaru tries to take it. Rook g4, hitting the bishop has to go, and now he takes this pawn. Okay, but now what happens is that the a6 pawn is gonna fall. So rook c6 check, king e7, rook takes a6. And okay, white should win this game. Yeah, he has the c passive, he has the a passive, which is very strong, and he should just win the game. But let's see what happens. So rook g8, rook a7 check, king e6, c5. By the way, the game is very, very long, so I'm gonna go a little bit quicker. The game is something like, I don't know, 90 moves or something. So okay, so rook d8, king c4, rook d1, trying to activate the rook, rook a6 check, king f5, c6, white is just pushing his pawns, rook b1, king c5, rook c1, king b6, knight d8, c7, knight e6. And here is the critical moment. White only has 17 seconds on his clock, and finally he blunders. Okay, kind of, and FIDE master shouldn't make this blunder, but okay, under time pressure, you are winning against Hikaru. Okay, white is just some accurate moves away from basically taking this game, yeah? So this pawn is protected. So basically, only thing that you need to do is just to go rook a8 and promote this pawn, yeah? And let's say after rook a8, black, has to take it, I don't know, and Okay, I mean, this is just completely winning, of course. So that would be it, but somehow, okay, white just collapsed under pressure and played king b7, of course running into the fork knight c5 check, and now, okay, so now Hikaru takes the exchange, but interestingly enough, this position is still a draw. Well, the point is that white has this very strong pawn on c7, protected pass pawn with the bishop, and also he has a lot of other pawns, right? So this a pawn also could be potentially pushed, and black's only pawn, this e pawn, is just impossible to get it going. So now from this moment on, players basically just trying to flag each other. So he goes towards the pawn, black starts pushing his pawns, a5, white just tries to push, a6, and this position objectively should be draw. None of the sides can make reasonable progress, but okay, let's see what happens. So they just shuffle, nothing is happening. Okay, some chances, computer here, for example, probably there is some way for white to untangle and push this pawn, but okay, it's very complicated. Both players are under 10 seconds, so let's keep going. Bishop g3, there are some, at this point, kind of pre-moving actually, especially white. So rook e6, bishop g3, just repeating moves. Now, okay, so now he gives up his a6 pawn, but he gets this e4 pawn. And now basically white should never lose, like even if he loses all of these 3 pawns, still it's a theoretical draw. Rook against the bishop, but with these pawns he should be actually winning. So, but okay, it's Hikaru who is playing black. Rook a5, king f3, rook b5, king g2, rook b4, bishop f4, rook b3, king f3, and you see, okay, engine is saying every move is a mistake, but just disregard it. Both players are under 5 seconds now. So e4, rook b5, bishop e3, rook b3, king f4, rook a3, e5, and after rook a4 check, as you can see, black wins on time, white's time run out, and this is how Hikaru wins his game against Artin Ashraf, the FIDE master. So when Kramnik is referring to games, I mean, this is one of their games, right? And I think it's just so ridiculous to have the idea that black cheated in these games, because after something like, I don't know, already here, black was just lost kind of, and he was just trying to hang on. Then white made this mistake with king b7 and got forked, and somehow Hikaru just outspeed him. So okay, this was the first game that I wanted to show you. Okay, so now this game he played against international master Paula, which some people know their real names, his real name, but I don't know who he is. But he's also over the board probably something around 2400, so I mean, Hikaru is just some level above him. Now let's see how the game goes. Hikaru is playing with the black pieces, knight f3, g6, c4, bishop g7. Hikaru plays his usual blitz opening, knight c3, d6, g3, bishop d7, bishop g2, and queen c8. Hikaru likes his setup a lot in blitz. He puts his queen and bishop on the battery, and he's trying to go bishop g3 and exchange this very strong bishop on g2. So actually it happens, d3, bishop h3, takes 6, knight d5, hitting of course the c7 pawn. So black just comes back, protecting it. Short castle, c6, knight goes back, knight e7, rook b1, b5, b4, e5, b4. White is trying to push on the queen side, open up this b line for his rook, generate some counterplay. And f5, and well, black is trying somehow to play on the king side. Of course, if he can complete his development, he will get an attack. Kings in the end like attack on the king side, especially because this bishop on g2 is missing. But okay, white can be quick because black's development is somehow a little bit suspicious. Okay, b5, and Hikaru plays c5. Okay, and it's an interesting move. Of course, he doesn't want to allow this opening of the b file. Opening up the b file. But so he closes down with c5. But now, of course, it keeps up this d5 square forever. So white immediately jumps into it. Knight gf6. And e4 is a very interesting move. basically closing the center. Center is kind of locked, but establishing this very powerful knight on d5. And now, okay, now white has some ideas of jumping with the knight to g5 also. So now Hikaru takes on d5, cd5 goes h6 to stop knight g5. But of course the drawback of h6 is that g6 pawn is now very weak, and knight h4. And okay, here simply black doesn't have a very good way to protect g6. I mean, the only way that I see is to go king f7, which is, well, it shows that something went wrong already. So as you can see, I mean, Hikaru is just worse. I mean, I would even say lost out of the opening. It only moved 17. So, many of his games are like this, so I just don't understand what Kramnik is trying to say, basically. So Hikaru tries, okay, we cannot defend the g6 pawn in a normal way, so let's just give it up. Short castle, knight g6, rook f7, and e takes f5. And here, basically, white is completely winning, okay? White just took 2 pawns. You cannot take on f5 because knight e7 check. And, well, actually, white can just protect this pawn later with g4, although he doesn't, but he could. And white is just winning. But okay, let's see what happens. So knight f6, queen f3. Now c4. Okay, this is a very, very instructive move. So Hikaru says, okay, I'm lost on the king side completely. This is just doesn't make any sense. The knight is on g6. So now at least he tries to get some counterplay on the queen side. So okay, he plays c4, d takes c4, queen c4, bishop a3, hitting this pawn on d6, very weak. e4. Hikaru is trying to be tricky, but just queen b3. And now, well, you have to trade queens because, of course, black doesn't want to trade queens, but he has to because, well, queen c7, just terrible move, just running into rook bc1, getting hit all over the place. And of course, you have to keep the protection of this pawn. Pawn on d6 is always weak. So black basically has to trade queens, rook b3, and knight d5, bishop d6. But, okay, here white is simply completely winning, okay? White just has very, very active pieces, this knight on g6, and also white is a pawn up, okay? I mean, of course, black takes on f5, but still white is a pawn up. So now he plays the move knight f4, which is maybe not the best, but okay, it's a decent move. So knight b6, rook e1, knight c4, bishop b4, rook e8, bishop c3, bishop f8, avoiding the trade of bishops, bishop d4, bishop d6, and f3. Well, okay, f3 is actually not a good move, and white played it fairly quickly. After 4 seconds, he had some time to think. f3, of course, if it works, it's a good move because the pawn is pinned, obviously. So you just want to take the pawn on e4, but the problem with f3 is that, of course, tactically it's very weakening. Although it's hard to say what move white should have played because black is hitting the knight. Sorry, hitting the knight. This is not the knight. But, okay, actually, it was maybe necessary to just play kind of a passive move knight e2 for the moment. And then the knight would transfer itself to c3. But okay, white tried to play active f3. Unfortunately, it's not very good. Bishop f4, g4, and knight e2. And of course, he missed this move. Hikaru spotting it immediately. Knight e2, forking the rook, pawn on f3 with the fork. So basically, white's position is collapsing. So rook to e3. And now Hikaru even says, okay, I'm just going to take on f4 because knight f3 for the moment doesn't work because it runs into rook f3 and we cannot take, pawn is pinned. But just rook f4 and white's position is just collapsing. So now, I don't know, he had to maybe play f takes e4 and after knight f3 just sacrifice this exchange and take on a7. This maybe would have given white some chances to survive, but okay, this is already kind of lost also. So he played king f2, which just loses on the spot, very beautiful, knight f3, hitting the rook. and he played king g3, trying to be tricky, attacking black's rook, but he just missed that after takes, there is knight g2 check, forking the king and the rook, and black will be up too much material already. Actually, you cannot even protect the rook, so yeah. So here he resigned. So as we saw in this game also, Hikaru was worse. He just lost his pawn, 2 pawns on the opening. But he's a very tricky player and he's very strong in tactics, obviously. So he just kept playing, kept creating some counterplay, also down into the end game. And okay, finally he did manage to trick white basically with this 92, attacking everything in white position. So a very nice game from Hikaru, and also this was one of his games. Okay, so now this game he's playing against Angel 28, which is a grandmaster from Armenia. He's Aram Hakupian, and this was also one of the 46 games that Kramnik is referring to. So actually this game is really amazing. So let's just see what happens. Hikaru is playing with the white pieces. He plays his usual opening. c4, e6, knight c3, bishop e7, queen c2, castles and b3. So white is not committing to play the move d4 because he wants to play this bishop e2, and he wants his bishop to be nice and open on this long diagonal. So c5, bishop b2, knight c6, a3, stopping knight b4, of course. White sometimes might want to play bishop d3. Sometimes you also might want to play d4. But here black said, okay, I played knight c6 already, so let's go d4. And actually it's a strong move. Knight e4 and e5. So knight f6, bishop f6. And already actually black is quite a bit better. I mean, he has a very strong pawn center. And white really is lacking development. So he has to develop quickly. Bishop d3, hitting the pawn on h7. g6, h4. So Hikaru is just going for the attack, but it shouldn't really work because black first of all has a very good development, but also his center is just very strong. So, but okay, it's a counterplay. I mean, nevertheless, the pawn is coming and it's quite scary. So let's see how he does it. Bishop g7, h5 and f5. Okay, very aggressive, but it makes some sense already. Okay, black obviously is threatening e4. And with this huge center, so white basically is forced to play e4 to stop this pawn, and now f4. And he says, okay, I close the center, and he's gonna start playing on the queen side, probably, that black that is. And with this closed center, it's very hard to attack for white now. Okay, hg, and long castle. Of course, what Hikaru is doing is now very risky, because, well, this king on c1 is not really safe with all of these pawns, and if ever black can open some file, it's going to be checkmate really quickly. But okay, white also has some open h file, although it's not really dangerous. So bishop d4, pinning the knight, rook to g1, king f7. Very instructive. Black is just trying to get the king to a safer square, and also preparing rook h8 to fight for the h file. Knight h4, rook h8, g3. So white is trying to open something on the king side desperately. He's hoping for some opening here. So black actually takes f3, fg, bishop f6, bishop f1, king g7, moving out of the f file. Queen d3. So you see the white's queen is kind of trapped on c2. It doesn't really have any way useful to go. So he plays bishop f1 followed by queen d3, bringing the queen into the game. Bishop g5, knight f3, rook h1, and bishop h6. Okay, the bishop was kind of under attack by the knight. Bishop h3, trade, and queen f6. And well, now a lot of pieces hasn't been traded. The position is probably around equal, although really it's a question of whose king is safer, and I think both kings are kind of not very safe. But the fact that black has a very huge center, has the space advantage, gives him some advantage. Okay, so queen e2, rook f8, knight h2, queen e6, queen g2, and b5. So finally black is getting to white's king. This king is kind of lonely on c1, and black is trying to open up the queen side. So g4, bishop f4, very nice. So Hikaru plays g4. I mean, because his rook on h3 is quite silly, right? So he plays g4 so that this rook can go anywhere it wants, but it gives up the f4 square. So bishop f4, cb5, knight a5, king c2, c4, and okay, you see it's very dangerous here. White is under a lot of pressure, and actually after the move b4, objectively actually white is completely lost after the move c3. Now of course c3 is not a very easy move to play because the knight is hanging and you feel like okay, anyway there is no need to do such a thing, but actually after c3 it's just completely over, because let's say if ba5, just actually very strong move c takes d2, and this pawn is just killing white, right? But okay, and of course the c file also open for the rook, so this was just completely game over. But okay, this is somehow very, very computerish play. What actually black played also makes a lot of sense. After b4 he just went knight b3, knight f3, and now c3, also very strong, queen h1. But here he played the move d3 check, which is not very strong. It allows some, I mean, counterplay. Of course, both players are low in time, but I mean, I just want to show you that Hikaru is basically getting mated, so he's by no means winning here. But okay, at the end he does his magic. Now he just could actually take on d2, knight d2, and after rook h7 check, let's say king g8, rook h8, we could run actually. And I mean, there is nothing really that white is threatening. Let's say after queen h7, we go king e8, and we are quite a bit safe. I mean, let's say take, there is no perpetual. Yeah, we just try to run, let's say like this. Queen f8, king d7, queen g7, king c8, and eventually we will run towards here and block the checks. And okay, here of course it's clear that black is completely winning with this monsters pawns d4 and c3. So okay, this was a possibility. Anyway, black didn't do it. Instead of knight d2, black played d3 check. Now Hikaru takes king d3 and cb2. So he takes a bishop, but still position is very tricky because white has this battery on the h file. He's doubled on the h file. So king c2, trying to somehow control this pawn, you know, not to let it get queen somehow. Knight a1 check, very interesting move. King b1, queen b3. And okay, already queen b3, getting the queen away from this lonely king is the losing mistake. Probably he should have done, well, computer is suggesting some crazy move, queen g8. Very calm, just stopping rook h7, and then saying that, okay, I'm just better here. But after king b2, I mean, it's not so clear what's happening. The knight on a1 is trapped. I mean, black is a piece up, but that piece is this knight on a1, which will be probably lost. And okay, we can play knight b3, but then somehow maybe queen e1, trying to get here and getting the queen in front of the rook. Anyway, very complicated position with no time the clock. It's impossible to play it precisely. But black played queen b3, and now rook h7 check is actually winning because the queen is no longer protecting. But Hikaru actually played knight d4, which is a very tricky move as well, hitting the queen in two different ways. And but actually what black should do is just to sack his queen. Black just should take on d4, and after rook b3, knight b3, let's say king b2, knight d2. Black has a rook and two minor pieces for the queen. The position is still quite complicated, but also white's queen is suddenly not so great. Yeah, it's just on h1 and doesn't have a lot of prospects here. Cannot really move somewhere here. So the best move is actually probably just queen c1. Funnily enough, you know, getting in the way of this discovery, but trying to invade with the queen. But okay, black didn't do it because it's psychologically hard somehow to sack a queen just like this. But okay, he found the move that is kind of worse. He just took on h3, well, hoping that okay, white would take back and then he takes the knight. But white plays so-called Zwischenzug. White plays knight e6 check, and now it's just all over. So king f6, queen h3, king b6, and king b2, and now the knight is trapped. Black's king is just in the center. It's just terrible. And unlike the previous position where the knight could have escaped, here there is no escape for the knight. So black here also run out of time, but okay, the position is already completely lost. So as we saw in these games, I hope I could have shown you that these games were very up and down. Hikaru was lost at various moments, but finally he could pull out a win. So all in all, I hope Kramnik reconsiders his positions. He's of course one of my favorite players actually, but with these recent comments, I don't know what to think about them. It just looks like he kind of lost it. So anyway, thanks to everybody for watching. If you have any suggestions, please let me know in the comments. And also, if you like this kind of videos, subscribe to my channel, like this video, it would be really appreciated. So I will see you in the next video, and until then, goodbye.